Have you ever met someone who seemed perfectly friendly until you started doing well? Nothing dramatic changed. You didn't insult them. You didn't compete with them. You didn't try to prove anything. Yet somehow, the relationship began to shift. Conversations felt different. The energy felt different. Their behavior became harder to understand. Perhaps they became more critical, more competitive, more distant, more eager to point out your flaws. And the strangest part, the better you treated them, the more confusing their behavior became. At first, most people assume these reactions are caused by jealousy, and sometimes they are. But Carl Jung believed there was often something deeper happening beneath the surface. Because human beings rarely react to reality alone. We react to what reality means to us. We react to the stories we tell ourselves, the comparisons we make, the insecurities we hide, the fears we refuse to confront. In other words, people are often disturbed not by who you are, but by what your existence awakens inside them. This is especially true when someone feels inferior. Now let's be clear, feeling inferior does not mean someone is inferior. Those are two very different things. A person can be intelligent, successful, attractive, talented, and still feel inferior. Because inferiority is not an objective condition. It is a psychological experience. It emerges whenever someone believes another person possesses something they lack. Confidence, freedom, discipline, status, purpose, authenticity, or even peace of mind. And when those feelings arise, the mind often begins defending itself, not consciously, not deliberately, but unconsciously. This is where behavior starts becoming strange. Because instead of admitting what they feel, many people act it out. They project it, compensate for it, hide it, disguise it. And according to Jung, this is where some of the most revealing aspects of human behavior begin to emerge. Before we continue, I want to ask you something. Have you ever noticed someone's attitude change after you became more successful, more confident, or simply more comfortable with yourself? What happened? Let me know in the comments. Because once you understand the psychology behind inferiority, many confusing interactions suddenly make sense. The first sign is one of the most common, and one of the most misunderstood. Sign 1. They become overly critical of things they once ignored. One of the earliest signs that someone feels inferior to you is that they suddenly become an expert on your flaws. Things they never noticed before become impossible for them to ignore. Small mistakes receive enormous attention. Minor imperfections become major discussions. Tiny weaknesses become recurring themes. And at first, this can feel deeply personal. You may wonder, why are they focusing on this so much? Why does every conversation seem to drift toward criticism? Why do they seem determined to find something wrong? The answer often has very little to do with the flaw itself. Because criticism serves a psychological function, it restores balance, at least temporarily. Imagine someone who feels diminished in your presence. Perhaps your confidence reminds them of their insecurity. Perhaps your discipline reminds them of their inconsistency. Perhaps your growth reminds them of opportunities they never pursued. These feelings create discomfort, and discomfort seeks relief. One of the fastest ways to reduce that discomfort is to find evidence that you are not as impressive as you appear. The mind begins searching, scanning, investigating, looking for weaknesses. Because if flaws can be found, the psychological gap suddenly feels smaller. Jung understood this tendency well. He believed people often project onto others what they cannot comfortably face within themselves. And sometimes criticism is simply projection wearing a disguise. The person attacking your confidence may secretly struggle with their own. The person criticizing your ambition may secretly regret their lack of action. The person obsessed with your imperfections maybe trying to avoid confronting their own. This doesn't mean every criticism is invalid. Sometimes criticism is accurate, sometimes it is helpful, but when criticism becomes obsessive, repetitive, and emotionally charged, it often reveals something deeper. It reveals that the issue may not be your behavior. The issue may be how your behavior makes them feel, and that's a very different thing. The second sign is equally revealing, but far more subtle. Sign 2, they turn everything into a competition. Have you ever noticed someone who seems incapable of simply sharing a moment? You tell a story, they tell a bigger one. You mention an achievement, they immediately mention theirs. You share a success. They quickly redirect attention toward themselves. At first it feels harmless. Maybe they're enthusiastic. Maybe they're trying to relate. Maybe they're simply excited. But over time, a pattern emerges. Nothing is allowed to exist on its own. Everything becomes a comparison. Everything becomes a contest. Everything becomes an opportunity to establish who is ahead. This behavior is often rooted in inferiority, because when someone feels secure, they don't need every interaction to prove their value. They can celebrate another person's success without feeling diminished. They can listen without competing. They can admire without comparing. But when inferiority enters the picture, comparison becomes automatic. The mind begins measuring, ranking, evaluating, calculating. Who is more successful? Who is more respected? Who is more admired? Who has achieved more? And once that process begins, genuine connection becomes difficult, because the relationship is no longer based on understanding. It is based on positioning. Every conversation becomes an invisible scoreboard. The tragic part is that many people don't even realize they're doing it. The comparison has become unconscious, a habit, a reflex, a way of protecting the ego from uncomfortable feelings. But no amount of comparison creates lasting confidence, because confidence built on superiority is fragile. It depends entirely on staying ahead, and eventually someone always catches up or surpasses you, which is why true self-worth must come from something deeper, something comparison cannot touch. And that brings us to the next sign, one that reveals itself in a surprisingly passive way. Sign 3, they minimize your accomplishments. One of the clearest signs that someone feels inferior to you is that they struggle to let your achievements stand on their own. Whenever something good happens in your life, they immediately search for a way to reduce its significance. You receive recognition. It wasn't that big of a deal. You reach a goal. Lots of people do that. You build something meaningful. You were lucky. You improve your life. You had advantages. Notice what is happening. The accomplishment itself is not being examined. It is being diminished. The goal is not understanding. The goal is reduction. And this behavior often confuses people because it seems so unnecessary. After all, why would someone feel compelled to downplay another person's success? The answer lies in the psychology of comparison. When someone feels inferior, your success can become emotionally threatening, not because your success harms them, but because it highlights something they would rather avoid. A gap, a possibility, a missed opportunity. Perhaps they once wanted to pursue a similar goal. Perhaps they abandoned a dream. Perhaps they secretly doubt their own abilities. Whatever the reason, your achievement creates psychological tension, and tension seeks resolution. A secure person resolves that tension through inspiration. They think, if they can do it, maybe I can too. An insecure person often resolves that tension differently. They think, it wasn't that impressive anyway. Do you see the difference? One response expands possibility, the other protects the ego. Jung understood that human beings frequently create narratives that preserve their self-image. If acknowledging your achievement would force someone to confront uncomfortable truths about themselves, the mind often searches for another explanation. Luck, timing, connections, circumstances. Anything except the possibility that your effort, discipline, courage, or persistence played a role. And this is why some people seem unable to celebrate your victories. Your victory is forcing them into a conversation with themselves, a conversation they may not want to have. This doesn't make them evil, it makes them human. But it does reveal where they are psychologically, because emotionally healthy people do not feel diminished by another person's growth. They recognize that someone else's success is not evidence of their failure. There is room for more than one person to thrive. There is room for more than one person to succeed. But people trapped in feelings of inferiority often struggle to see life that way. To them, your rise feels like their fall, and that belief creates all kinds of strange behavior, including the next sign. Sign 4. They secretly enjoy your setbacks. This is perhaps the most uncomfortable sign in the entire discussion, because most people want to believe that those around them genuinely want the best for them, and many do, but not everyone. Sometimes a person's support has conditions attached to it, conditions they may not even be aware of themselves. Everything feels normal when you're struggling. Everything feels comfortable when you're uncertain. Everything feels safe when you're still trying to figure things out. But then your life begins improving. You gain confidence. You make progress. You become happier. You become stronger. And something changes. The energy shifts. The enthusiasm fades. The encouragement becomes weaker. Then something goes wrong. You experience a setback, a disappointment, a failure. And suddenly they seem more engaged again. More interested, more present, almost relieved. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean they enjoy your suffering. The reality is often more subtle than that. What they enjoy is the disappearance of comparison. When you're succeeding, they feel inadequate. When you're struggling, they feel equal again. The psychological pressure disappears. The tension relaxes. And that relief can create reactions that are difficult to understand. Jung's concept of the shadow helps explain why. The shadow contains qualities we prefer not to acknowledge: envy, resentment, bitterness, jealousy, competitive impulses. Most people don't want to see themselves as envious. So those emotions are pushed into the unconscious. But emotions don't disappear simply because they're ignored. They continue influencing behavior from the shadows. This is why someone may genuinely believe they support you while simultaneously feeling relieved by your difficulties. The conscious mind says one thing, the unconscious mind feels another, and the resulting behavior becomes confusing. One of the most valuable skills you can develop is learning to observe people's reactions to your success. Not because you should become suspicious, but because reactions often reveal what words conceal. People can say they're happy for you, but genuine happiness has a different energy. It doesn't compete. It doesn't diminish. It doesn't disappear when you're thriving. Secure people remain supportive whether you're succeeding or struggling. Threatened people often fluctuate, and those fluctuations tell a story about what's happening inside them. The next sign reveals itself in a much more obvious way. Sign 5. They constantly seek validation around you. This behavior is fascinating because it often appears where inferiority is strongest. Imagine being around someone who constantly needs reassurance, constantly needs recognition, constantly needs confirmation. Every conversation somehow circles back to their achievements, their problems, their experiences, their importance. At first, it may seem like confidence, but often the opposite is true, because genuine confidence is quiet. It doesn't need constant reinforcement. It doesn't require an audience. It doesn't need endless proof. Inferiority, however, is hungry. It seeks validation because validation temporarily eases self-doubt. This creates an interesting dynamic. When someone feels inferior to you, they may become unusually dependent on external affirmation. They need compliments, agreement, recognition, anything that restores their sense of worth. This is especially common when they perceive you as possessing qualities they admire: confidence, discipline, success, influence, purpose. Instead of developing those qualities internally, they begin seeking emotional compensation externally. The problem is that validation never solves inferiority, it only postpones it. The relief is temporary, which is why the need keeps returning, again and again. Jung understood that true psychological growth comes from integration, not from collecting approval, not from gathering praise, but from confronting the parts of ourselves we avoid. The insecure person looks outward, the growing person looks inward, and that difference changes everything, because eventually one person becomes dependent on validation, while the other becomes grounded in self-awareness. The contrast can be striking, and sometimes threatening, which leads directly to another strange behavior. Sign 6. They imitate you while criticizing you. At first, this sign can feel almost surreal. Someone criticizes your choices, questions your decisions, dismisses your approach, yet over time they begin doing remarkably similar things. Perhaps they criticize your discipline, then adopt your habits. Perhaps they mock your goals, then pursue similar goals themselves. Perhaps they dismiss your mindset, then gradually begin speaking exactly the way you do. This contradiction confuses many people. How can someone criticize what they secretly admire? The answer lies in psychological conflict. Part of them feels inspired. Another part feels threatened. The inspired part wants to emulate. The threatened part wants to resist. Both impulses exist simultaneously, and the result is contradictory behavior. Jung observed that people often project qualities onto others that they have not fully developed within themselves. When they encounter someone expressing those qualities openly, admiration and resentment can emerge together. They admire the trait. They resent the discomfort the trait creates. They want what they see, but they dislike being reminded that they don't yet possess it. This internal conflict often produces imitation wrapped in criticism. They borrow the behavior while rejecting the source, not because they're malicious, but because acknowledging admiration would require vulnerability. It would require admitting, "I see something in you that I wish existed more strongly in me." And for many people that's difficult, much easier to criticize, much easier to dismiss, much easier to pretend indifference. Yet behavior has a way of revealing hidden truths. Eventually, actions speak louder than words. And imitation often exposes what criticism tries to hide. The next sign is perhaps one of the strongest indicators of all. Sign 7. They become uncomfortable with your confidence. There is something deeply unsettling about confidence when a person feels inferior. Not arrogance, not superiority, confidence. The quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need attention, the kind that doesn't seek approval, the kind that simply exists. Why is this so threatening? Because confidence changes the emotional balance of a relationship. When you constantly seek reassurance, others occupy a position of authority. When you constantly doubt yourself, others become the source of certainty. But when confidence develops, that dynamic changes. You begin trusting yourself. You begin making decisions independently. You begin speaking without excessive hesitation. And suddenly some people become uncomfortable. They accuse you of changing. They accuse you of becoming arrogant. They accuse you of thinking you're better than others. But often that's not what's happening at all. What's actually happening is that your confidence has removed a familiar dynamic. The uncertainty they were accustomed to is disappearing, and without realizing it, they miss it. This is one reason confident people are frequently misunderstood, especially by those who rely on comparison. A person who feels secure sees confidence and feels inspired. A person who feels inferior sees confidence and feels exposed. The same behavior, two completely different interpretations, and the difference has nothing to do with the confident person. It has everything to do with the observer. Jung believed that our reactions to others often reveal hidden aspects of ourselves. Perhaps nowhere is that more obvious than here, because confidence acts like a mirror, and not everyone enjoys what it reflects back. Which brings us to the final sign, a sign that often appears when your growth becomes impossible to ignore. Sign 8. They try to pull you back into an older version of yourself. This may be the most revealing sign of all, because it often comes from people who have known you for years, people who remember your struggles, your doubts, your insecurities, your limitations. And that's exactly the problem. They remember the old version of you, the version that fit comfortably into their expectations. Then you begin changing. You become stronger, more disciplined, more self-aware, more independent, more authentic, and suddenly they start encouraging old behaviors, old habits, old patterns. They remind you who you used to be. They reference old mistakes, old identities, old weaknesses. It's almost as if they're trying to pull you backward. Why? Because your transformation creates uncertainty. The old version was familiar, predictable, comfortable. The new version requires adjustment, and not everyone wants to adjust. Jung believed that psychological growth often involves shedding outdated identities, parts of ourselves that no longer reflect who we are becoming. This process is liberating, but it can also be disruptive, especially for people who were emotionally invested in the old version. Some individuals genuinely celebrate your growth. Others mourn the loss of your limitations. And that distinction reveals everything. Supportive people adapt to your evolution. Threatened people resist it, not necessarily because they dislike you, but because your growth forces them to confront their own stagnation. And that can be painful. This is perhaps the most important lesson in today's discussion, because many people hear the word inferior and immediately think of weakness, failure, lack of worth. But that isn't what Jung meant. Feeling inferior is a psychological experience, not an objective reality. Some of the most accomplished people in the world feel inferior. Some of the most talented people feel inferior. Some of the most admired people feel inferior. Because inferiority is not determined by circumstances, it is determined by perception. The real danger is not feeling inferior. The real danger is refusing to confront those feelings honestly. When inferiority remains unconscious, it emerges indirectly as criticism, competition, resentment, projection, control, strange social behaviors that confuse everyone involved. But when those feelings are acknowledged, something remarkable happens. Growth becomes possible, self-awareness becomes possible, transformation becomes possible, and that's ultimately what Jung's work was about, not judging people, understanding them, including ourselves, because every one of us has experienced moments of insecurity, moments of comparison, moments of self-doubt. The question is whether we allow those feelings to control us, or whether we learn from them. The people who grow are not the people who never feel inferior. They are the people willing to face those feelings honestly. And in doing so, they no longer need to diminish others in order to feel valuable. They no longer need competition to create worth. They no longer need comparison to define identity. They discover something deeper, a sense of value that comes from within. And once that happens, another person's success stops feeling like a threat. It starts feeling like proof of what's possible. Before you go, I'd like to ask you something. Which of these signs have you experienced most often? Was it criticism, competition, dismissal, or someone trying to pull you back into an older version of yourself? Share your experience in the comments. You may be surprised by how many people have lived through the exact same thing. And if you enjoyed this exploration of Jungian psychology, subscribe and join us for future conversations about human nature, self-awareness, and the hidden forces shaping our lives. Until next time, keep looking inward. Because the more deeply you understand yourself, the less power other people's insecurities have over you.